Namaskar, Jai Hind. Let us move on with information and analysis of US-Iran war. In the first video, I covered the major causes and what actually led to this war. Today, I'm going to cover as to how the war began and what is it that it entails for us. So come 28th February morning, by that time we all know that diplomatic talks failed in Geneva. Oman had mediated, but it failed. Aragchi and the counterparts Rubio and Witkoff, they did not agree. And what third round was accepted, and Aragchi, the foreign minister of Iran, said we are progressing well, but there was a contradictory report from the US side. And that was the time when 27th February things were going awry and plans for next diplomatic talks were on. 9:45 morning in Tehran, 28th February, and here in India 11:45 a.m. a regular Sunday, and suddenly the skies were dark. Ayatollah Khamenei's regime was shaken. President Trump was very vocal. He said, accept, surrender, or be prepared to die. We will demolish everything. And remember, Americans and the Israelis were watching him for a very long time. They were tracking. Were they waiting for Ramadan month? Possibly yes. Were they waiting for the Saturday morning? Possibly yes. But history is much more complex than this one single war. What is unique in this war is that it's an aerial war. There's no ground on which the two sides are fighting. The distance between Israel and Iran is almost 2,000 kilometers. America came all the way from the other side of the planet and amassed his forces around Iran. Over 1,000 targets, two nations against one enemy. The world woke up with a different news about the Middle East. And what Kautilya said, strike the enemy when he is distracted, when he is actually unprepared and exposed. So unlike the normal traditional war, that it begins at last time or at night, the Israelis and the American forces, they attacked in broad daylight. Possibly they had a great morning breakfast and then launched the operations. And the Americans called it epic fury. The operation went full blast. Israelis called it the lion's roar. The lion's roar. Israelis went smashing. And on the counter side, Iran said, Khatm al-Tufan. And with that, more than 10 cities were targeted, the cities and all, In addition to Iran, the other cities that were hit badly were Elam, Kermanshah, Lorestan, it's a mountainous area, deployment were there, Karaz, Tabriz, Qom, and many more. So when all this happened and Iran woke up to this bad news, but they were prepared. They knew, they had their own intelligence sources. They knew it could come any day. And all this built up was ultimately for this day, the offensive day. Iran was well prepared and Iran knew its means. And what happened actually was the world never expected. The world expected that Iran will be subdued, dominated, and Khamenei and the regime change would take place overnight. And the way Iraq went down, the way Libya went down, the way Venezuela went down, the way Syria went down, and similarly, Iran will also go down. But it didn't happen that way. Iran had warned that we don't want fight. We are prepared to talk about nuclear program. But should we be attacked? If we are attacked, then we will respond very heavily. And you could see that the entire Middle East, all the bases of America were hit. Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. So all of them were affected. And mind you, Americans have got their bases all around the Red Sea. all around Iran on both sides. So the situation was not very happy situation, and by the time evening came, the strikes were on both sides. Death and destruction was there. Iranian school was hit in southern Iran. 85 girls killed. Everyone cried, hue and cry. But I countered. I said, today when Iranian school children were killed, these girls were killed, what happened when the Hezbollah from Lebanon attacked a school, children playing football in northern Israel? 12 children were killed. What happened when 1200 Israelis were killed, 250 taken hostages? That time nobody spoke. Nobody said a word. Today suddenly everyone has woken up because Iran has been attacked and America is bad. That's all right. So when you do an analysis, do it from both an equal side. And you find that these are the tragedies of the war, the side effects of the war that one has to be prepared with. So this was the day that went 28th February, and with this the entire mobile communication went off, internet went off, the air services, commercial air services were stopped. More than 6,000 flights got cancelled. Thousands of passengers got stuck within the Gulf region and outside the Gulf region. India had its own challenges. We have a huge number of our students studying there. We have large Indian diaspora working there. Overall, almost 9 lakh people are working in the entire Gulf region, West Asia, Middle East, and this entire region. What happens to them? And should the war go ahead, we will have the after effect of Shias, this war and atrocities in our Shia community in India. So those outcomes are well known, would have its impact, and we got to be prepared with this. So that was the first day of the war. Iran airspace closed, Kuwait and other airspace closed. Multiple other forms of warfare, cyber warfare, information warfare, were in full swing. The misleading messages kept coming. However, this broad light offensive and the attack, people thought would die down by evening and may continue for another day. People appreciated that, maximum 1 week Iran would have to give up because of the massive strength of forces on the side of Americans. The CENTCOM had deployed, they have their target list, and they were so well prepared to actually demolish Iran. From the nuclear program stoppage to regime change, and in the end, just before the war, on 28th itself, in fact, President Trump said, we want the safety of the Americans. So was it the Americans in the region that they were under threat? And what threat? Iran had not done anything. And when they struck, if they knew that Iran had nuclear weapons, so striking any of the nuclear site is very dangerous. The radiation leak would be catastrophic. So as it happened in Second World War in Japan or Chernobyl in Russia, this too would happen in Iran. So why was America so mercilessly hitting all possible targets where nuclear plant was there? Less the Russian plants. Russian plants have been in operation since almost 2011. And 1 gigawatt worth of electricity is being produced from those nuclear plants. The Russian workers are there, technicians, engineers are still working there. That has been spared. And on this, the Defense Secretary Hegseth said, he called it the most lethal, most complex and most precision aerial operation in the history. Yes, it was. It's multiple countries joining, hitting targets across 2,000 kilometers. And by evening, in fact, UK also declared that we are part of this campaign. So on day one of the war, or HR day of the war, I observed that massive launch of offensive by the American side, the response by Iran. And remember, the Iranians have almost 3,000 plus missiles with them, supersonic missiles. They have host of drones, Shahid drones, which they actually exported to Russia. They helped Russia in manufacturing these drones. They are in huge numbers available with them. and therefore Iran would respond was all right, but would respond with such coverage, such vast area they would cover, was not expected. Another new thing that happened was in the early morning of 1st of March. That I'll cover in the next video. But suffice to say that on 1st March, when we all woke up, the news flashed. Khomeini killed. Supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini, was killed. He was no more. Initially, people did not believe it. They thought it's again an information campaign, information war, but that was true. So what Americans had planned on Saturday was they had anticipated, and they were monitoring the entire movement of Khomeini, his ministers, his commanders and all. So when they got together on the morning of 28th for a conference in Tehran, that was the ideal target. So the informants were inside, the spies were at work, they knew it, and Americans possibly did not want to miss this opportunity. And that was the reason that by evening or early next morning, they said Khomeini killed, along with him 8 top commanders killed, and overall it was said that time that 40 commanders had been killed, which included their defense minister, the commanders of IRGC, and their some technical experts. So if I analyze the day one war, firstly, no one expected that America would attack, Israel would attack, because the talks were going on. The 4th round of diplomatic talks were scheduled, so it was not expected. However, the halabulla from President Trump's side was absolutely there. He was saying, I'm messing, you behave, otherwise I will strike. So while they were talking on one side, President Trump was in no mood to relent. He was out and open in saying that we will strike, and they actually did. So that was a big surprise to the world. The war that was between two parties, two nations, actually had not angered the entire region, and it involved now America directly into the war. The second part was that by evening, UK also declared that it is part of the American forces against Iran. And sure enough, the next day, Cyprus was attacked by Iran. So the area covered by Iran in attacking 8 countries across almost again 2 to 3,000 kilometers apart. So the target selected themselves was far too wide range targets. So accuracy of the target, firing, coordinating, doing all that was a very difficult military operation, a very complex military operation. So you realize that leadership, coming to my topic of leadership, that in such crisis, what could have been done? If they had thought of Saptang theory, if they had thought of Shadgunya theory, they wouldn't have possibly gone into. They would have applied other methods to tone down Iran rather than strike down at Iran. So that is one part where leadership would have made a lot of dent. Instead of bringing casualties and killings, it could have been much better. And therefore, the resilience of the leaders, their thought processes have to be very wide. They're thinking broad, but when they are actually acting, they're acting for the good of the people. So with that, I'll close today. In day one, Iran launched, they said, about 541 drones, and out of them almost 90% were intercepted. Some fell left, right. Some missiles, they hit the targets. Some targets especially in UAE, they tried to hit Burj Al Arab, they tried to hit Palm Jumeirah, and in Qatar and other places, the military bases of America were attempted to be hit. Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, number of targets there. In fact, in Bahrain, US Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters is there at Manama. So that was also on the strike list. And the strike of missiles went as far as Tel Aviv. And in Tel Aviv, almost 20 people are said to be injured, and a lot of casualties are still there. Right, so I'll come to the close of what happened on day one, that is 28th of February. Strikes from both sides, and I think the resilience and the patience gave way. The decision makers could not wait for any longer, and as a result, this strike came as a surprise to the world, and it was a difficult decision. But one had to accept this. Could have been prevented. I still am of the opinion that it could have been prevented had President Trump and his advisors were not very forceful. Secondly, possibly the target that they were getting, possibly they wouldn't have got it another time. Thirdly, the area that it covered include almost close to World War area. The the number of countries got getting involved is equivalent to that. Though the scale in Second World War was very high as compared to this, and so overall, not a good day for the world, and the strikes did their impact, and we shall talk more about the strikes in the next video. If you like it, please do share with others and do follow. All the very best. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.